And they're allowed to look at this. A lot of the times, the salary and the wages, executive compensation, bonus benefits, any item of value, all of that is fair game. And the Department of Commerce can look at that and say, well, based on this, we think that there may be a financial or a security risk based on your compensation structure here. So be prepared to deal with that avenue of inquiry as well. Okay, still talking about cultivator security. I really cannot emphasize this enough. On if your application is going to get bumped, it is either going to get bumped because you don't have the right background, you don't have the right finances, or your security plan is defective. And finances, you can work on that. You can get your investors, you can get everyone up. That's something that you can solve. Your operating plan, you can work with people who have experience in the industry. For your security plan, you really have to rely on those outside experts. It's not something that you're going to be able to, unless you yourself have a background here. But even then, I'd recommend that you go with a third party on this. And I'm not going to go through all the security deposits. This is one of the longest sections of the Ohio Administrative Code. There have to be alarms, there has to be fencing, there has to be video surveillance, a security system equipment in a secure location. And this includes entrances, exits, interior doors, parts of the facility where cultivation is occurring. Essentially, you and your employees are going to be under surveillance for the entire time that you're conducting this business. And if you can't do that, have a third party do that. And there are certain areas, and you're going to have to make this clear in your layout, that certain employees can't even get into. So any kind of secure area where there's actual cultivating, actual processing going on, that's only type 1 key employees who can be involved in there. And this goes to even third parties who are coming in to do things like repairs. They cannot be in there unsupervised. A type 1 employee has to be in there with them. So as you're advising your clients on this, as you're getting into this, really stress this about how even if someone, a type 2, has a good reason to go in there, they cannot be in there unsupervised. Okay, this last part, we talked about cultivators containing medical marijuana can only be on the supervision of a registered employee. You're also going to have to limit the use of combination numbers, prevent the sharing of employee-specific access credentials. Multiple cards are a good idea on this. Having different uniforms for the different types of employees is a good idea for this. As a best practice to ensure that the individuals who are not allowed in certain areas can't get in there, and that'll go a long way in establishing your security plan. Okay, and again, we're going into the more surveillance on this. But your surveillance system have to basically be state-of-the-art. There are a lot of requirements here. None of this can be deleted. I know if you're dealing with some businesses who are new to the industry, I know a lot of retail, it's standard practice to delete certain security recordings, usually after 24 or 48 hours. They can't do that here. This has to be available. This has to be available for inspection, basically on request. A whole bunch of alarm systems have to be in here. Silent alarms, panic alarms, alarms on the trucks, voice-activated 911 dialing has to be available in most of the areas of the cultivating facility and the processor facility. Don't try to set this up yourself. And let's talk about transportation. because this is another area where not only is it going to be important for your application, but an area where you can get in a lot of trouble if you don't know what you're doing. The cars are regulated, or they're vans, or security vans, or however you're doing this. You need to have a transportation log that contains everyone who is who is driving these trucks, these vans, the license plate number, the time of departure, the delivery route, the weights of the shipment. You are going to have to weight the car or the truck or whatever it is that you're using there when you get there to do delivery, when you get back. And it can't be it has to be an unmarked car. 2 employees, and my favorite one, your delivery times have to be vary and routes have to be randomized. This is a difficult one to do yourself, and it also makes it difficult to conduct business. But if you're working with a security professional, this is something they're already going to have and be able to do. It's similar to providing large cash deposits, which a lot of this is modeled after, are the requirements for there. But don't try to do this yourself. So when you submit all of these requirements, you're looking, and you're going to have to provide a plot plan. It does not have to be complicated. I'm taking this from Teridiol again, just showing what the layout's going to be. And again, you don't actually have to, if this changes a little bit from the time that you submit the proposal, and that can be cured later on, but you should really have this as detailed as possible when you submit your plot. Show where the operations facilities are going to be, show where the cultivating is going to be taken, show where the mandatory access restrictions are, show the entrances and exits. And just make sure that this is something that you're going to be using a while, and don't rely on an ability to change this plan later. Okay, the final element of this for the cultivator and for the processor is your financial plan. And basically this is making sure that you have the funds able to do this, that you know what the risks and rewards are, that your client knows what the risks and rewards are on this. The majority of the applications that I reviewed were pretty conservative in their return on investment on this. Most of them said, we don't expect to make a profit within 2 years. And from that point on, the rest of it is going to be dependent on how quickly other processors open up, how quickly other dispensaries open up. So it's okay to be conservative when you're providing these kind of projections, but it just has to be something that shows you know what you're talking about. For the cultivators, you're also going to have to show that you have significant liquid assets that are ready to go. Yeah, you have to have another $500,000 if you're doing a level 1 cultivator, $50,000 if you're a level 2 cultivator. And this has to be unencumbered, or that can be converted in 30 days after a request, which for practical purposes means cash. It means cash somewhere in the bank. Okay, and assume, and we talked about this before, because record keeping is also going to be part of your financial plan, that everything is going to be recorded, that you're going to have ongoing reporting requirements, and have that built into your processes before you even go, before you even do anything. A lot of this is just best practices anyway. Know what your company is doing. But if you mess up on that recording in a normal situation, in a company that's not as heavily regulated as a cultivator or a processor, there can be consequences, but they aren't going to be nearly so dire as losing your license. So talking about the scorecard, we went through briefly the 5 key categories that the Board of Commerce is going to use in identifying your score and your weighted score in order to provide a provisional license. And this is going to apply for both processors and dispensaries. It's virtually identical in the regulation. If they receive the same score, operations wins. So keep that in mind when you're drafting this. And if you have to cut back on one area, don't let it be operations. Make that something that wins in the event that you tie with someone else there. Okay, so we should talk a little bit about some of the differences because we've been mostly talking about cultivators, even though that applies to all of the processors as well, the majority of these regulations. Process application fees are significantly less. It's only $10,000. Under statute 40 are currently allowed. Not that many have received their final inspection or their final certification. We're way behind on that. But these largely follow the cultivator requirements. And that goes along for every stage, for the business plan, for the operations, quality assurance, and security especially is virtually identical. So the only difference is when we're talking about the processor versus the cultivator is you're going to be focusing on a different background. You focus a lot on agriculture, horticulture when you're doing your cultivator application. If you are doing your processing application, the most applicable experience, unless you have someone who is doing processing, is going to be food service. In fact, and we'll talk about this a little bit, the administrative regulations for the preparation and serving of food and processing of any kind of edible consumption apply to any processor. So not only are you processing marijuana, you're also a restaurant. You're also a food processor. You're also someone who is taking product, taking produce, and changing it. So when you're looking for background there, people in the manufacturing industry, from manufacturing agriculture, might be a good bet for you to partner with. Your operations plan, this is also going to be a little different. Obviously, you're focusing on processing and extraction techniques. The biggest difference here, you have to put in all of everything that's in the different edible, the different tincture, or whatever it is. In addition to the faculty specifications, one second, maybe on the next one, is you are limited to certain identified methods of processing. There are itemized in the administrative code the ways that you can process cannabis and put it in a product for sale. This can be somewhat limiting. We've already spoken with a couple of individuals who have invented new ways to process cannabis and to turn it into the butter or the oil or whatever it is. And unfortunately, a lot of those ways, when we're talking with them, the Midwest concentrates is one of them that we just discussed this with. Although they're inventive, and there certainly could be use for them, are still illegal in Ohio. So if you have a processor who's come up with a great new idea, you might have to pull them back a little bit. They're going to be restricted based on this code and what they can do. Yeah, the question was, can you hire as part of your business the individual who's going to be coming up with your processing And the answer is yes. In fact, you should do that. And that can be even in the organizational side. He can be an officer, you can make him a vice president, what have you. You know, for that, it's actually I would recommend that they be a part of the business structure as opposed to a third party. Okay, the other difference that you're going to have from the cultivator are your recall policies and procedures. These have a shelf life of 1 year, and that's by the administrative code, and that's by statute. As far as I can tell, that doesn't actually relate to the rate at which a marijuana product or medical marijuana product expires, but it's just a year. So have those processes in place already to take back that product that you've given to the dispensary, or that you haven't been able to sell after that 1 year period. And that's the only major difference there. Okay, so let's assume then that your processor has gone through their application, has submitted everything, but they're not done yet. And this goes to the amount of money that they need to have on hand. It's $250,000 for a provisional license, or $100,000 for a provisional license if it's located in a cultivation facility. And I want to talk about that. As far as I can tell, that's theoretical. I don't know if any business has actually attempted to do this yet, to have a processing site in their cultivator's facility, but the administrative code allows for that. So if you have a particularly daring client who wants to try to do this, you can certainly try. It's not prohibited. It just hasn't been done yet.